Alright, let's continue with the apron. Maybe you thought we were finished, but no, not really yet. Let's continue onwards to the standard pushback rules. These rules are quite complex. Why? Because of release points. There are standard push routes to different points where they are released, and there are a lot of them. So we try to use them. And the explanation is as such. There are a few things. First of all, these custom pushbacks, they're normally fine for all the Flight Simulator platform. However, you cannot pull forward. We've taken some stands from real life, some release points from real life. We have put them in our scope, and we're using the ones that can be done for pushback, but you can never assign a point where a pilot has to push and then be pulled afterwards. Keep in mind as well, not all pilots may be able to do this. If they're not able, nothing to do about it, just give them a standard pushback or direct straight pushback. And remember, some pushes may be mandatory, some are voluntary due to other restrictions, and you can of course see it in the LOP. There's a specific chapter about it, and there's also an appendix which are showing these routes. So without further ado, this is Copenhagen, and these are the pushback routes. And there are a lot of them, and it looks maybe a little bit complicated. So we are just gonna go ahead and break them down right from the beginning. To begin with, you have the top alpha stands. These here are the Juliet 1 and the Juliet 2 points facing in each direction. That's just to make it easy. 26 to 30 goes to Juliet 2 facing one way, and Alpha 34, 31 goes to Juliet 1 facing the other way. Here you suddenly see as well, some are dark blue and some are light blue, because the light blue are denoting some alternate pushback routes. For example, from Alpha 31 you can do an alternate pushback to Zulu 2 facing this way. But normally we use Juliet 1 and Juliet 2 up here at the high alpha stands. Moving further onwards, you have the rest of the alpha stands. Alpha 25 is a little bit of an odd one because it doesn't have a release point, it just pushes to Juliet facing east. Other than that, you have Alpha 22, 23 that's just gonna push to Juliet 3. And then you have one of the big release points, Juliet 4, because it has a huge amount of stands that are pushing to this point. 4, 6, 8, 18, 19, 20, 21. They all push to the same point. Likewise, you have down here Alpha 17 to 14. It's on purpose that we didn't include Alpha 12. These are pushing to the Yankee 0 point, either facing to the southeast or to the northwest, depending on which stance it is. These two combined, you will see also has alternate pushbacks. One to the stand Alpha 50 and one to Zulu 5. So if you're brave enough and the pilot is good enough, you can ask him to push all the way down to Zulu 5 here to face to the east. Moving onwards, now we have the Bravo stands. Now we start with the daunting one, the Mike Alley. Real life, you are not allowed to push any airplanes here because of the jet blast that's hitting the terminal. Therefore, all airplanes are pushed out of the alley out to taxiway Yankee and Zulu. There you have some release points. You have Yankee 1 and Zulu 6. These are the most normal release points because they're facing the direction that you want the departures to go in. Also, you see Alpha 12 is included here because it pushes to Yankee 1 as well. You have an alternate option for Yankee 2 if you like, and you also have an alternate release point here, Zulu 7. You normally should not use Zulu 7, but it is included because if you have runway 12 in use, you're taxiing the other way, and then you need to push to Zulu 7. Keep in mind, if you have an heavy airplane pushing out from stand Bravo 10, it needs to use Yankee 1, it needs to use Zulu 6, it's not allowed to use the Yankee ones. Moving onwards, we have Bravo 16, 17 and 19, they all go to Yankee 3. Make sure when they push to Yankee 3 that then they will take the left turn on Alpha, so that they can either go to 04 right via Zulu or to 22 right out there via Alpha. Bravo 15, you have an option of pushing to Papa 1 or Yankee 3, however Papa 1 is normally the easy one, as you just have an easy taxi for him going out. There's also a alternate push out to this position Zulu 8 if you absolutely want to use it, especially from Bravo 19 and 17 is it very useful. Moving onwards into the alley here, you have a section of 4 stands here, Charlie 28, 30, Bravo 7 and 9, and they all push to this release point X-ray. It may look like a taxiway, it's not a taxiway, it is a release point. They push in each direction, it also means that only one can push at a time going in there. For the rest of it, you have Quebec 2 and Quebec 1, which is basically pushed from whatever stand can push into them, with a very long alternate pushback routes that can go from all the Charlie stands all the way out of the alley and all the way down to the Yankee 4 point. There it is. So there are of course some different options depending on how you like to do it. If we're moving onwards, then we have the next and one of the very infamous places that's also very tricky, which is the Romeo 1 and 0-1 release points. Now, the rules are that you have these stands here, Charlie 27, the Delta stands, and basically the first 2 Echo stands. But normally the 4 Delta stands, Charlie 27 are the important ones. You can push to either 0-1 or Romeo 1, however you need to face to the north. You need to face to the north, and then you need to do like a horseshoe turn around to the opposite. So if you're pushing on Sierra, you're taxing via Romeo. If you're pushing on Romeo, you're taxing via Sierra. The point on the stands to the south of it may push facing the other way. And then you got Romeo 2 for Charlie 37, you got Romeo 3 for Charlie 39. This is also the one place where you're starting to see some red lines, and these are very special cases. So you have for Charlie 29 and Echo 22, where if it's a heavy airplane, you just push, straight push, because they are not, big airplanes are not allowed due to the wingspan to actually do this horseshoe turn. So there we just have to do a straight pushback. The other red ones here in the bottom is especially for the Airbus A380 and the Boeing 747-8. And these are to Victor 3 if you go to 04 right, and it's to Bravo if you're going to 22 left. So these are special release points for the big airplanes. So there's another section which is basically just completely independent, which is the one from the low cost stands. This looks way more complicated than it actually is. You have 2 release points from the low cost Whiskey 1, Whiskey 2. They are not mandatory to use. You can use them for traffic purposes if you like. For example, it would be a way to make sure that if you have a push at Foxtrot, let's say Foxtrot 1 and Foxtrot 5, you can push them to each individual release points to make sure they don't collide with each other. However, you're also allowed just to push them onto Whiskey facing west. As you see, there's quite a few of alternate release points, especially you can see there's a little bit of a different things here. That's where it splits. So Foxtrot 1 and Foxtrot 4, you can push either to 02 facing south or 03 facing north. So there's some different options there. This also can be, these 02 and 03 can be very nice to use, because if you have one at Foxtrot 1, he's ready for push, but you have an inbound traffic who's ready to come in, you can have this guy push into 02 and that way keep the alley open for inbound traffic. An alternate thing here is Foxtrot 89, which can also be used for push from Foxtrot 4 and upwards. It's a bit tricky to use, so not really used very often, but it's there. Likewise, 04 is already there for an alternate push in case some parked on the South Foxtrot stands need a pushback. Normally it's propeller airplanes and they don't need a pushback anyway, but there it is just for the purpose. If we're moving onwards to the last segment, it's the Echo stands and the hotel stands, and these are not really very important. There are a few different release points and you can choose to use them or you can choose to ignore them. There's not really much to it. Whatever stands can perform a push to release points, you can use them, but we don't have a lot of airplanes holding out here, hence it is not really very important. So that's basically it for everything. It is a bit complicated, you need to study the chart a little bit, but once you really have control of the situation, you remember which ones are the important: Juliet 4, Yankee 1, Zulu 6, Romeo 1, 01, you really quick have a nice handling of how it goes. Thank you.